One of the most important occupations for women in ancient Egypt was music, singing and everything related to vocal art. We know about this thanks to the Karnak school founded by the high priests of Amun under Nefertari. The school was called the Place of the Pure Women, or the House of the Chantresses. Playing musical instruments in general was considered extremely important for the education of any self-respecting lady. Unfortunately, ancient Egypt left us no musical notation, but the richness of their music can still be felt by looking at tomb paintings. Right here in front of you is a great classic from the tomb of Nakht, 15th century BCE. These are actually illustrations for the funeral banquet, and you see three very young musicians. One plays a large harp, the second is a girl with a lute, and the third holds a double flute. Very often at feasts, young girls from among the servants appeared completely nude except for wigs. But if you look closely, they wear a jewelry belt made of gold threads and a very beautiful necklace. Everything here speaks of incredible luxury. Fine wigs, floral garlands on their heads, water lily buds on their foreheads. We can imagine how this music sounded. In this case, we see girls from among the educated servants performing for the repose of the deceased. But this art was not beneath very noble ladies either. Here in front of you is a drawing from the tomb of Antifoker, Middle Kingdom. This is a noble lady, the daughter of the tomb owner, playing the harp and singing a song. The lyrics are curiously written in vertical columns that comment on the image. And on the left is an authentic harp from a rather late period, from the British Museum, with the king's head depicted on it. These are the instruments the Egyptians used in everyday life, and music was a very important part of their culture. Priestesses in Egyptian temples wore, as we already mentioned, the title Chantress, or singer. And during major festivals, performances by dancers and acrobats were a natural part. Here are 15th century BCE fragments of relief from the wall of the Red Sanctuary in Karnak. We see a male harpist standing behind, and chantresses ringing sistra, the sisters of music. In the lower register, men beat out the rhythm with their palms for the temple choir. In the lower left are these rectangular shapes. From them, the sistrum players perform dizzying throws. Unfortunately, we can't fully reconstruct Egyptian dances from individual poses, but they definitely included acrobatic moments like these. Among the magnificent female images left by Egyptian culture, there are a great many depictions of priestesses. Moreover, any respectable court lady, or even just the wife of an official, not necessarily a high-ranking one, tried, if her means allowed, to become a musician or singer in a temple choir. Traditionally, in temples there were both priests dedicated to their careers and so-called God's wives or chantresses, the enclosed ones. Up until the first millennium BCE, they didn't necessarily take vows of celibacy. Most often, they were wives of prominent men. In general, a wife who was a musician or singer became especially respected if she had a good voice and pleasant appearance. A magnificent close-up behind the Lady Rinai. This is the era of Hatshepsut, one of the most remarkable monuments from the collection of the Pushkin State Museum of Fine Arts in Moscow. I hope it's clear to you that the figure was symmetrical. The monument is made of black ebony wood, inlaid with silver and finished with gold. And according to the inscription on the base, Rinai was a chantress of the god Amun. Looking at her incredible nobility and perfectly sculpted figure, you can imagine what a rich spectacle a performance by the temple choir must have been. From the era of Rameses the Great, we even have preserved correspondence between two noble ladies. One lived in Thebes, the other in Memphis. The woman from the northern capital, Memphis, writes to her friend in Thebes that she's extremely happy because for a major festival in the temple of the god Ptah, the choir of the goddess Mut from Karnak has been invited. The participants in this choir were said to have truly extraordinary voices. Legends circulated about them in Egypt at that time. So the heroine of our letter writes to her friend how thrilled she is that, although she couldn't travel to Thebes for some reason, she'll finally get to hear this astonishing choir. She then describes the festival, and speaking about it, she especially raves about the incredible acrobatic poses that the dancers and chantresses form with their bodies. They were specially invited and brought from different temples across Egypt. It was an unbelievable spectacle, captured in this personal correspondence from the 13th century BCE. Among the images of priestesses, there are several remarkable monuments. Here's one that even made it onto the poster for today's lecture. Her name was Imau. She was a temple singer, the 8th wife of a very high-ranking official, and apparently also the mother of Queen Nefertari, the wife of Rameses II the Great. This monument is from the late 14th to early 13th century BCE, one of the incredible masterpieces in the Egyptian Museum in Cairo. Even posthumous vandalism, someone raised a hand in outrage and damaged the face, couldn't ruin it. Because in my opinion, this body, visible through the sheer pleated linen, represents a pinnacle of perfection that even ancient Greece couldn't reach. The enormous volume of the wig on her head on one hand shows her as an embodiment of the goddess Hathor from a symbolic point of view, and on the other hand, demonstrates this incredible luxury. Black wigs, golden jewelry, white pleated linen garments through which the body shows, priestly accessories, minat necklaces in her hand. You can imagine how breathtakingly beautiful this was. Another monument from the Cairo Museum, also a priestess from a slightly later period. She has floral garlands of water lilies on her head and a ritual golden sistrum, a metal rattle of the goddess Hathor that was often used in Egyptian worship. At the same time, such an instrument, like the minat necklace, was a marker of the high status of the woman depicted. Yes, let's talk a bit about appearance and the world that surrounded an Egyptian woman. Not a queen, but still a quite noble lady. Because of course what I'm about to describe was inaccessible to common women. Again, the Egyptian Museum in Cairo. A statue of the priestess of the sun, Marira, and his wife. And by the way, she was also called Inu, from Saqqara, 14th century BCE. Look at her wig, at her garments. This is absolutely fantastic. Egypt was at the peak of its golden age, and here the combination of multi-tiered wigs, jewelry, and pleated white linen reaches its absolute height. For example, in the well-known fairy tale, The Two Brothers, a famous Egyptian tale, it's told how a peasant's wife spends half the day in her hut in front of a mirror, or more often just in front of the surface of water, trying to style her own hair into something resembling the fashionable hairstyle she saw on the head of a noble lady somewhere in the city. At banquets, which we've already discussed, fashion had its own kind of fashion verdict. They made little statuettes, figurines depicting women in the most fashionable garments of the era. You know, the style of clothing, and especially the features of wigs, change very noticeably, so these accessories can date a monument quite precisely. And accordingly, these little figurines of fashionable ladies, girls, noble women, and mistresses sitting at banquets were exchanged, examined, discussed. In essence, such statuettes replaced a fashion magazine and allowed people to talk about the latest trends in court fashion in Memphis or Thebes in the corresponding century BCE. Far more touching and astonishing testimonies that have miraculously survived to our time are these genuine wigs right in front of you. Here's a wig from the 15th century BCE from the British Museum. And I'm showing you not just the wig itself, but also an old photo below where, beside this wig, there's the box made for storing it. Wigs were made from plant fibers or horsehair, but the highest quality, most expensive ones were always made from human hair. And here you can see on one side this mass of the finest braided plaits, and on top a chignon, dyed with henna and styled with the help of beeswax pomade. Wax allowed the hair to hold its shape perfectly. In Egypt, they even invented curling tongs similar to our modern ones. Here are golden tongs from the 15th century BCE, also from Leiden. And with these tongs, decorated with running desert dogs, you could style the wig and create something extremely fashionable and highly desirable. Noble ladies had mannequin heads like these to place their wigs on. These heads often had a certain portrait resemblance to the lady herself. This particular lady was the wife of the Vizier Apur, or a contemporary of Amenhotep III, 14th century BCE. Just imagine. We peek into a lady's boudoir, and along the painted wall stand these wooden heads on stands, each holding different wigs. The lady could simply put one on and choose whichever suited her mood that day. Egyptians most often shaved their heads or kept hair very short. Despite how extremely hygiene-conscious Egyptian society was, this was still Africa. The scorching sun and unfortunately lice were common. So it was much easier to quickly shave the head and put on a fashionable wig than to create a complicated hairstyle every time. Especially since at banquets people wore aromatic cones on their heads that melted and let fragrant oils drip onto the hair. Such a design made it easy to remove a soiled wig and soon appear before the amazed guests in a completely new hairstyle. In everyday life, they wore simple caps. And here on the mannequin head, you see exactly that. A cap. Many of the authentic caps that have survived to our time were quite often decorated with bead embroidery. So even in this domestic version, the lady looked very elegant and attractive. This mannequin head is now kept in the Saqqara magazine of the Egyptian Museum. But wigs are a whole separate topic in Egypt. Still, speaking about women, I can't help but tell you how beautiful this was. Right here is a reconstruction of a wig from the Middle Kingdom period. A monument found in the tomb of the royal daughter Sat Hathor and her husband. If we set aside the royal diadem, obviously this wasn't meant for the princess. A wig like this could easily have been worn by a noble lady. Look closely. These black-blue, almost black strands that the Egyptians considered extremely beautiful. The ideal of Egyptian beauty was always a brunette. Red hair was discussed in Egyptian society as something not quite earthly, linked to chaos, and not fitting into the usual picture of the world. Here these black strands are tied with golden rings. Rings of gold foil, of course. The sight is stunningly beautiful, decorative, and luxuriously voluminous. And to prove to you that not only queens could wear such wigs, here's one of the most beloved pieces in the Egyptian Museum in Cairo. The head of an unnamed lady from Lisht, one of the necropolises near Memphis. Look at this breathtaking face. Agree, it's stunning. It's made from very durable wood, framed by this wig with lost eye inlays. The little golden appliques show how the tiniest braids of this voluminous wig were tied with golden rings, creating that amazing combination of blue, black, and golden shine. Here are a few more wigs on the left. An astonishing display case of wigs found in the tomb of priestesses from the turn of the 11th to 10th centuries BCE, Egyptian Museum in Cairo. These are grandiose constructions. Just imagine how magnificent Egyptian noble ladies must have looked wearing them. During one of my first trips to Egypt, it was summer, incredibly hot. I approached this case in the old display. The museum didn't have proper climate control back then, and to my surprise, I caught this specific, rather pleasant, heavy scent. Later, when we discussed it, I asked the museum staff if the wigs still smelled. They said yes. When the wigs warm up, they release an aroma. They're soaked in oils, of course. Naturally, we can't talk about the authenticity of that scent anymore. The oils have long gone rancid. But it's astonishing that even now, after so many centuries removed from our time, some faint trace of that fragrance still reaches us. And here's a magnificent wig made in a dreadlock style. Quite unconventional, from the tomb of a priestess in Deir el-Bahari, also in the Metropolitan Museum. You understand it's very conditionally placed on a copy of the famous Nefertiti's sculptural portrait. But still, look how it's tied with a dried wreath of real plants and real flowers. Once again, this gives us a chance to imagine a noble Egyptian lady at a banquet. Egyptian banquets were spaces of pure pleasure, refinement, and beauty. The perfect place to show off new fragrances brought from Syria, or to display astonishing jewelry custom-made by a loving husband. Here's another fragment from the tomb of Nebamun, brought to the British Museum, a banquet scene. You see absolutely stunning young girl musicians. And because these aren't noble personages, but simply professional musicians, the artist allowed himself an incredible breach of canon. 2 of the girls are shown full face, something truly astonishing. Their pleated garments are incredible, with luxurious, voluminous wigs that the artist clearly wanted to emphasize. Aromatic cones again, water lily flowers hanging from their necks, and here they sing, clapping the rhythm of the song with their palms. The far right girl plays a double flute, and nearby even younger musicians dance. All of this, of course, made an Egyptian banquet not just beautiful, but truly captivating. Interestingly, in the world of Egyptian dance, there's one more fascinating detail. In several houses at Deir el-Medina, that very village of the royal artists, there are depictions of a dancing girl. She dances in a space filled with vines, but look carefully at what's preserved between her back. These massive details ending in a red semicircle. Those are dragonfly wings. This is the dragonfly dance. Reconstructions are available online. Search for them. Artificial large wings were tied to the girl's back, and she fluttered like a dragonfly or butterfly among the hanging vines in a pergola. At that moment, she would always be playing a flute or some other delicate musical instrument. Very refined, elegant, high art that the royal artists found so enchanting, they even borrowed the image of this heavenly dancer to decorate the walls of one of the artist's living rooms. So, these weren't just musicians. Temple singers, Chantresses of Amun, were rock stars of their time. Educated, powerful, often wives of high officials, they performed for gods and pharaohs, their voices echoing through Karnak, their wigs towering like crowns of Hathor. They turned music, beauty, and ritual into pure status and divinity. And the most mind-blowing part? All of this glamour started with one simple choice: shaving their heads in the heat, then choosing the perfect wig from their vanity stand. Each one a masterpiece smelling faintly of oils that have survived 3,500 years. But hair was only the beginning. To truly become divine, they needed to smell divine. Next time, the secrets of ancient Egyptian perfume, melting head cones, Cleopatra-level scents you can almost recreate at home, and the luxury vanity tables that made elite women glow like goddesses. If you love this dive into temple glamour and 4,000-year-old wigs, hit like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. Part 2 drops in just a few days. Which ancient beauty hack would you try first? The wig or the perfume? Drop it in the comments. See you there.